Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we shall discuss the feature news for today, that is 20th of April 2022. Today's feature news is on the Denotified Tribes. It has come to light by the Parliamentary Committee that the money spent for the Denotified Tribes development has been zero in this last fiscal year. Money was allocated for spending for the complete 5 years starting the last year, and the expenditure has been just zero, and that is why it has come under criticism. This is what brings to light the issue of Denotified Tribes, what has been the history, background, and how their development can be ensured. So let's start this discussion, and let me welcome all the people. Hima, Amlan, Kim, Kriti, Ashish, welcome all of you. Welcome to the other participants here who are joining in late and who are viewing offline. All right, let's begin this. Before understanding what the community of Denotified Tribes are, I want to explain in short the kind of qualities and features of a tribal community, so that you may be able to understand what further segregation or what further marginalization Denotified Tribes go through. So some important features which are to the against, not to the advantage, but against the tribal communities are their presence. Their geographical presence is at isolated locations. In general, they might be located in an island, in a hilly area, or a forested area. You know the examples of each of them. Located in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, located at Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand areas of forest, located at hilly areas in Nagaland. So topography is one area of concern because of which they remain a little aloof, secluded. The second one is less integrated. They have a reasonable level of shyness from the general population, and that is the reason that they feel that they want to remain secluded. In fact, this is also translated into many other traits. For example, endogamy. So because of less integration, they also have endogamy in their own culture itself. This has got ill effects for the health as well, but then this is a part of their culture and they want to follow this. Along with that, lesser political representation. They do have a community sense of ownership. Individual rights are few, community rights are more. They have a community belongingness. However, their representation at political fronts, at state, at national levels is less. So while it has got an advantage of community ownership, they have lesser political representation, more social representation. They remain secluded, and possibly these are the 4-5 important reasons because of which the tribal development in India has always been at the back seat. India provides 7.5% level of reservation in education and in terms of employment to the scheduled tribes in the country, right? They have different dialect, culture, they have a sense of unity, they have a primitive concept of religion, the advanced concept of religion. For example, the presence of a god with statue, those things are less available. They have ownership and reverence for nature. This is what has been largely been understood about the tribal community in the country. All right, and amongst them are some specific tribal community known as Denotified Tribes. So before we understand what is Denotified tribe, we will have to understand what are notified tribes, how are they notified, what was the reason. Now this is the time of British era, when Britishers said that, all right, Bucha killing is only a template. All right, I'll have to remove this template. So notified tribes are those tribes which were notified at the time of British era into a specific act called as Criminal Tribes Act. Criminal Tribes Act. So certain people who would live in forested areas, people who would be migrating from one place to another, people who would not have a particular profession. For example, they wouldn't be agriculturalists, they would be participating in peddling kind of activities, selling, trading, staying at one place for a small time. Britishers designated those people as criminal tribes and notified them. The perception amongst Britishers was that these are the tribal people and these are the people who create ruckus for British administration, and let us stigmatize them, let us ensure that they are penalized, right? So penalty would be in the form that all the people who are born in this community, they would be designated as criminal tribes. Even if a child grows up to become a scholar, even if the child grows up to become a social activist, they would still be notified as a criminal tribe. Imagine this. So this is like a progeny of people and then only notified because of Britishers' agenda, right? This was the time of Britishers. But then post independence, this is where the government said that we will have to denotify these tribes, right? So these are denotified tribes. All the tribes which were a part of this Criminal Tribes Act, which were to be called as habitual offenders, they had to be released from this kind of cultural stigma, and that is why they were denotified tribes, right? So we had nomadic tribes. Quite a few of these tribes were nomadic in nature, right? So many of these nomadic tribes were denotified, but some specific nomadic tribes were still not denotified. So many of the denotified tribes that we have right now, which have been given relief, that is very good for them and their well-being and development. But then there are communities right now as well which are tribal communities, which are nomadic communities. However, they have not been given the welfare because they are neither a part of the central list of welfares, the state list, or the concurrent list. They are neither a part of scheduled communities, the scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, any of them. And what are the communities that I am speaking of? Right, in this image you would be able to relate. All of us would have seen images of small children doing acrobats in village areas or small towns and cities. We would have seen images of people who are taming birds, who are snake charmers, or people selling utensils in return of clothes. These are the people who keep moving from one place to another, settled at one place for a small time. And many of these people have been deprived of the basic facilities that Constitution has provided. Now, this is an error. This is an error where some of these specific communities which were nomadic in nature have not been put as a part of any welfare scheme. There are approximately 250 such communities. Overall, there are committees of the government which say that the total number of the nomadic tribes, total number of the tribal who are a part of erstwhile offenses from the Britishers' end, this amounts to total 10 crore. And a very, very decent chunk of this community, around there were 1200 or so many communities, but then around 250 such communities have still not been a part of any welfare program. And even when some communities have been a part of welfare program, zero has been the expenditure on their welfare. Why so? Approximately 500 crore was designated for their welfare, but zero was the expenditure. Have we not been noting of the development or the standards? And these are the times of COVID. Imagine when the government is doing so much for everybody, so little is being done for people who are indigenous, who are Indians, who are marginalized and have further been marginalized. Right now, before understanding what they have been going through, let me share some qualities of these of people. So they could be hunter, trappers of birds and animals. Bahelia, no, we call in Hindi the word is bahelia. Right, hunters, trappers, or gatherers. Pastoral community, right, people move from one place to another, pastoral nomads. And the third one is peritatic groups. For example, those people who depend on selling activities, purchasing activities, peddling, trading. Simple example are snake charmers, people who tell fortunes, acrobats, dancers. All of these communities, they exist throughout the country, be it Rajasthan or communities in Jharkhand, communities in the northeast and Kerala. Each of these communities have been deprived. In fact, we had covered in the current affairs months back, there was a community from Kerala which has only been found very lately and now being registered for Aadhaar and dissemination of the government programs. There are so many such communities which need help. And imagine these communities themselves receiving harassment from society's end. People do not understand the kind of profession that they do. They're always seen with an eye of suspicion. Not only that, imagine when they themselves are nomadic, what about their basic facilities, their homes, clothing, availability of toilets? That's a major concern for the nomadic communities, not being addressed at all. Availability of electricity. These are basic questions that many committees have raised. This question comes up again and again, but there's been no development because the communities are marginal and they need support. This is where the government must step in, and this is where the criticism from Parliamentary Committee has been put up, right? Not only the availability of toilets and basic facilities, what about education? What about their health improvements standards? If you look at the livelihood, nowhere to be seen, and the people are still professing what they have been culturally professing, right? And still viewed through the eyes of stigma and suspicion. And amongst this is no livelihood for these communities, right? Now, understanding the kind of seclusion that this community goes through, there is an urgent need for helping this community that we must have to acknowledge, right? So the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment has criticized the functioning of development program for denotified, nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes, right? See, one important thing, see, many tribes and communities have been denotified, right? Have been denotified, but all the denotified communities are not existent because quite a few are still nomadic in nature. So nomadic tribes, if this is the superset, a part of them have been denotified tribes. So they have been denotified, they have been given government programs, welfare programs, but there are quite a few nomadic communities which have not been included in any government programs, and there are 250 such communities. So possibly the most marginalized sections in the country, right? So denotified term stands for those communities which were first notified ones as criminal tribes by the Britishers between 1871 and 1947. They were further notified into different communities, for example, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, or other communities, right? After denotification, 200 communities were included in the OBC or SC/ST list, right? There is a further problem in this issue, that is that the culture of the people is so diverse that there are some of the communities which are from one religious group, another from another religious group, and the third one being from third religious group. And therefore, understanding their whole character trait and including them in one umbrella, one ambit is a challenge here, right? So this is a key point here. All nomadic tribes are not denotified tribes, but all denotified tribes are nomadic. So first part becomes very relevant. All nomadic communities have not been denotified as of now, right? So examples are Bhils, Meenas, Madhuras, people who are jute weavers, basket makers, all these people from different parts of the country, they constitute the three kinds of denotified tribes: hunter trappers, pastoralist communities, and people who are peddlers and people who keep roaming around. All right, so this is around 10% of India's population. Imagine, this is the size that they have, right? The problems that they are facing: criminalized by police all the time, habitual offenders is what people call them as, even when their family and they are not involved in this, viewed with an eye of suspicion and some stereotyping of them. Civil rights, availability of the civil rights, political rights, economic rights not available because they have not been recognized by the government in many programs. Legal legacy of stigmatization, rigid belief that their identity is associated with colonial times, and habitual offending. So these are the issues about these communities, right? The community is still getting explored and found at various places in the country, right? So many committees have presented reports on denotified tribes. For example, some communities have spoken about the total population. Some reports have spoken about the kind of schemes that they must be awarded. For example, one committee, Rainke Commission, has said that their population is at 10.74 crore based on census 2001. Similarly, other communities have development and welfare programs. They are, for example, providing hostels for young boys and girls, giving them scholarships, having voluntary organizations working for them, right? So providing economic empowerment to denotified communities. Simple example is, if they are basket making communities, the availability of Forest Rights Act. If there are students who are possibly doing well, then giving them the scholarship awards. So reducing down the fees or the minimum criteria for availing scholarship. Suppose if it was 10,000 rupees of family income, it must be decreased so that more people can be covered from this community, because they need more help, more trust from the end of the government, right? So scholarships must be given, and hostels must be created for those students, because from their family end, from the cultural end background, they do not have provisions for all this, right? All these facilities. So eligibility income limit should be raised. Government should have achievable targets. For simple example is, how could you not even spend the amount on the welfare of the people? Simply because you did not recognize them, we did not point them out. So this is a major lapse from the end of the government, and that is why one must note down the issues with this community. Due to pandemic, there has been further issue in the community. Imagine the provision of the midday meal for the children. Imagine the provision of integrated child development facilities, child protection schemes. The issue raised of availability of nutrition food for these people, and they are also humans, just like all of us, each of us are. We can't segregate between that population and this population. All of them, under the Constitution of India, deserve a rightful life, livelihood, dignity of treatment, labor, efforts, employment, and this is what is being met by the country, right? So policy review should be undertaken to ascertain the reason due to which the growth of denotified tribes has been sluggish, has been slow. There must be policy review. Now this is where one must know that we are failing at multiple ends. One of the ends that we are failing here are at the level of policy itself, and the other level is the ground root work. So when you look at what we understand, denotified tribes, before understanding denotified tribes, we have to understand the characteristics of the tribal communities and why they are segregated. So that is why the initial part of discussion becomes very important. What are the beautiful attributes of tribal communities, and yet what are the attributes because of which they are further segregated? Give examples of tribal communities from places of India. For example, a tribal community from Andamans, Jarvas, just handful number of people left. Less than 200, right? Similarly, communities with less than 10 population, right? Communities like Sentinelese in Andaman Island itself, right? Completely primitive and not integrated at all, and they do not want integration at all. So the qualities, the character traits because of which they are further secluded, segregated, they are important, and because that is how it becomes more accentuated, aggravated for denotified tribes, all right? And then their historical background. We understood this. We understood what are the reasons for why they are still lagging behind, because of the kind of culture they have, because of the profession, because of less government facilities available, because of the common social less awareness amongst people, because of our ignorance, our the common person's stereotyping and stigmatizing the population, right? And what is the opportunity for the nation, opportunity for the tribal community? Look at the constitutional values when we look at this. And along with that, some government programs. Understanding of some government programs is important. Simple example is having hostel, giving them schemes for health insurance, giving them schemes for education and levels of economy, livelihood. This is important. So this is how we cover a topic like this. Understanding denotified tribes and tribal community, both of them in the same topic. All right. Question for today: discuss the challenges faced by denotified tribes in India and the steps needed to overcome these challenges. Put down the example of the three type of nomadic communities, the nomadic communities who are still reeling through the challenges, multiple challenges of economy, health, education, finances, employment, all of them. So when you look at the challenges faced by the denotified tribes, they are the similar challenges which the tribal community, marginalized community faces, but then further aggravated by specific qualities. For example, they keep moving from one place to another. For example, they have a profession which is not being respected in the contemporary times, which is not at par with the demand of the contemporary society. Example, social relevance of their presence, it has been treated as suspicious. Right. So some examples could be put, apply your mind, and then attempt this question. Attempt this question, write down in the comment section itself. Now, if you like this initiative, show some love, show likes, comments, and shares. All right. Hello, Gopal. If there are questions, everybody viewing online, offline, please put it down. Hello Gopal, welcome. There is a difference I see between Northeast tribes and rest of the tribes. Is it because of the presence of majority in Northeast? No. Don't say that. What is the reason that you see Northeast tribes as different? What about the tribes from Andamans? Very different. So this is where we must get into the origin of the tribes, the ethnicity of the tribes. Many of the tribal community in Northeast are Mongoloids, and they are related to. They are somehow also related to the tribals in the Andamans. Yes, Nicobaris, and the people in Andaman are related to the Australo and African origins. Right. Similarly, many tribes in North India exist which have origins in the Aryan community. Some tribes have origin in the Dravidian community. We must know of the different kind of historical and ethnic background of Indian tribes. Each of them are unique. Each of them communities are unique, and there is a huge diversity in Northeast ethnic tribal communities as well. Right. So tribal in Meghalaya and tribal in Nagaland will be far more different. And in fact, I have heard that though it might seem to other people as similar people, but people in Nagaland can distinguish from the facial features itself that person is from a specific ethnic community and the other one is from a different community. Manipuris, we call them as Manipuris, but there are as many as 26 different major tribal groups in Manipur. So we have Nagas, we have Kukis, we have many other tribal groups, and each of them very distinct. All right. So with this, I would like you to look at this important thing that you have mentioned, Kim, that is the cultural roots, ethnic roots of different tribal communities around the whole country. Similarly, when you look at the Ladakhi tribes, far more different. The Ladakhi tribes, which are, so Changpas are the example. Then we have Gaddis, Bakarwal, such examples. And if you further move on to people in Rajasthan, there are communities which are into dance and performance in Rajasthan, and that's a very important community in Rajasthan. I'm forgetting the name of the tribe. Each of them have a distinct community culture, right? So now with this, there are questions, please put them down in the comment section. Hima, Babani, Tiasha, Amlan, Kriti, Ashish, Kim, good night to all of you. I will see you all again tomorrow evening. People viewing offline, please put your comments down in the comment section and we will get back to you. Thank you for watching.